What's up, Wellbeing Nation? We're back with another episode with a very, very special guest, Matt Blackburn in the house. He started a company called MitoLife, and I consider this guy like the Doctor Strange of like health and wellness. If you know who Doctor Strange is in Marvel Comics, this guy can like manifest things. He looks at the intangible and makes them tangible. He's able to look at the truth of the matter when it comes to your body, and then really bring out the most strongest and healthiest version of you. And I think that's really powerful. There are a lot of topics he talks about that are very unconventional and contrary to the typical, like, eat your macros and get enough carb, fat, and protein, and eat your vegetables, and everything will be dandy. He has a bit of a different approach to it. Things that we're not even paying attention to that are extremely important, that really dictate how well we even process and absorb these things. So I'm excited to have him on the show today. What's up, Matt?
How's it going, Samir? Thanks for having me back. Every time I'm on here, I have so much fun.
Awesome, man. So, like off the bat, when someone looks at like your profile, it's like you see this guy, some of his pictures, he's like half naked in the sun. He's about to jump into an ice chest of water that's super, super cold. Like, talk about those two things. I think, why sunlight? Because people are afraid to death of sunlight. And then why cold water? And why a chest of ice water?
That's an awesome place to start. Yeah. And so, I came from the diet perspective, carbs, proteins, fats, raw vegan, the whole, diet food paradigm. And that's cool. Food does matter. I'm not saying it doesn't matter at all. I'm very, we'll say anti-GMO. I eat a completely organic diet, non-GMO. Do the best we can there. But when we're getting down to the primordial elements, when we're getting down to cold and light and water, we're talking about like the foundation of health right there. And so I think even without anyone, changing their diet, really changing anything, to jump in like a lake or jump in an ocean, even if it's 1 degree colder, to actually change your to turn your knob in your shower to cold, even just for 5-10 seconds, there's a benefit there. You get a boost, and it's a boost at a quantum level. That's pretty cool. I mean, there's unexplained things that happen, and this is the key. This is why I'm into eating things that are kind of like weird, like royal jelly, like 5% of it, scientists don't even know what it is. So same thing with honey, raw honey. I mean, there's different substances, oregano. But there's a lot of, with water, there's still a lot of things we can't explain. Dr. Joel Pollack wrote a book called The Fourth Phase of Water. And there's like over 30 anomalies with water, things we can't explain, things it does that don't make sense. And so this is one of the most powerful places for people to start to, they don't have to invest. I invested in a commercial chest freezer and I converted it to an ice bath. And I did that because I was spending $11 per session for about 45 pounds of ice, which, it's probably not filtered water. I have to drive there, transport the ice. That's a lot of plastic, even though I'm recycling it. It just wasn't sustainable. And so I found through JP Sears and Daniel Eisenman, the Rob Ross, I found out about that chest freezer idea. And I bought one. It was like a couple $100, way worth the investment. It pays itself off. And, whatever 200 divided by 11 is. And it barely uses any electricity. And so you can plug it in. I always unplug it, especially because my parents want me to do that, and my brother. they're like, don't lie in there when it's plugged in. They're afraid that it's going to corrode and I'm going to get electrocuted.
Fair.
So yeah, it makes sense. I could probably handle the surge though, but I have enough DHA in my cell membranes. But I'm about to go into my first winter here. I'm at the mountains in 7,000 feet elevation. So I plan to actually upgrade. I'm about to start retreats here. I'm going to take on 4 people at once for a weekend retreat. We're going to do hot cold therapy. I'm going to have them doing red light sessions, sauna sessions. I'm going to clean their blood with microcurrents. I'm going to have them breathing water-soluble oregano in a nebulizer. We're going to do a lot of biomat treatment. I mean, we're going to have stations. This is going to be a healing retreat. And I'm actually going to buy if you live in a cold climate, this is a practical takeaway with this cold thing. You can go to like a Tractor Supply store and buy like 100-gallon tin tub, like for farms. And you fill it like halfway with water. And if at night, if it gets down to like 40 degrees, 30 degrees, you don't need a chest freezer. So that's what I'm about to do now that I'm heading into winter. I'm going to buy one of those, save on electricity. It's grounded. That's a huge aspect because I have to ground the chest freezer. I have a silver rod in there dangling. So there's a little bit of rust involved. It's just a hassle. But with the tin, that's conductive. So especially if it's going to be snowing and there's snow all around it. So there's cool little hacks. Like, it's about making it practical. That's what I'm really into. Because I do so many biohacks, and it's like, okay, how do I stack everything? When I'm standing in front of my red light, I'm on the phone naked. And so I'm boosting I'm tripling my testosterone production from getting red light on my balls while I'm like multitasking. So I heard that's what Dave Asprey does every morning. He's on a call with his assistant on his vibration plate in front of the red light naked. So it's like, as much as we can stack these things.
Well,
but
okay.
Good.
No, just like, I mean, you said so many interesting things that I want to unpack there. And the first, just to back up, go to the beginning is I'm going to go back to sunlight, because I think people, even I talk to, are terrified of it. Hitting your eyes, hitting your skin, especially if they're Caucasian. They're terrified of the sun, and they're throwing out these things like, oh my God, I got to wear SPF, and then if I don't wear SPF, I'm gonna get cancer, and it just goes down this rabbit hole of, oh well, I can't get in the sun because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and now you're coming here saying that it's not the case. Exactly. So in your words, like, why sunlight? Why is it necessary? And how do we dispel some of these ideas that are put forth? Maybe they're archaic. I'm not sure. So I just want to see what you have to say.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And a lot of people will say, when I start talking about this stuff, they'll be skeptical. Say, oh, do you learn all? I just had a troll on my YouTube page, with my dopamine and how to build dopamine with sunlight and tyrosine, supplementing tyrosine, getting sun in your eyes. And this internet troll was like, oh, did you read that in your mom's basement, or did you learn this from the internet, and blah, blah. Well, okay, there's hardcore research about the stuff I'm talking about. So I'm not going to try to convince any of your listeners of any of this stuff. I can point them to references, and I recommend YouTube search Dr. Jack Cruz, and instead of watching Game of Thrones or a movie, listen to his interviews. There's like countless 3 to 4 hour interviews, and the best one, like if you want to start with one that would just blow your mind, do Nourish Vermont 2017 Jack Cruz. I believe it's like 2 hours, but he pretty much breaks down like the hardcore research on all of this and why the sun is our friend. So in my words, that's kind of like the context and the backing. But I've Alexander Wunsch is another resource. Basically, our cells run on light. Our mitochondria. So we have 100 trillion cells, 50 to 100 trillion. Each cell, besides red blood cells, because those don't have mitochondria, but every other cell has these little power plants, and they are what power the cell. And they actually absorb light and they emit light. So they radiate infrared light. So this is how it all kind of comes together. When you go in the cold, when you take a cold shower, you shiver a little bit, especially if you have less body fat. Like me, like I'm lean, so I'm going to shiver more in the cold. Someone that has a little more fat, they're not going to shiver as much, but they're still getting the benefit. That's the mitochondria actually releasing heat. They're little microstars. They're suns. So we have quadrillions. We have more mitochondria in our body than we have human cells. Wow. So these are Yeah. So some people, like Jack Cruz says, these are bacteria that we stole, but Dave Asprey says that these bacteria actually chose us. So they saw us as a petri dish, and they moved into us and kind of integrated into our system. So either way, outside in, inside out, whatever it is, we have integrated with these conscious entities that are bacteria. And in Star Wars, Anakin Skywalker asked, I think it was Qui-Gon, about metachlorians. He says, "Master, what are metachlorians?" And he said, "Metachlorians are microscopic life forms that live within every cell." And he described like biochem. This is in Star Wars. And I was watching the movie. I was like, wow, he's describing mitochondria. So metachlorians that actually create the Force, like the connection for the Jedi to the Force, literally are mitochondria.
Oh my God. Mind blown.
Yeah. So on a these mitochondria actually create an electromagnetic field. So they have an inner and an outer membrane. It's called a lipid bilayer. Mm-hmm. And when food gets broken down, it gets broken down into fundamentally electrons. And electrons and protons flow across these way stations called cytochromes in the mitochondria, and there's 5 of them. And depending upon whether it's a carb, protein, or fat determines, like your hypothalamus is actually an electron accountant. That's why people that are obese, they can't control the carbon flow from foods because their body can't tell day from night. And practically what I'm talking about is getting bright light in their eyes at night and telling their brain that it's noon when it's almost midnight. Like all of our generation that goes clubbing every single weekend. I mean, I see this on the social media platforms. Friday, Saturday night, like clockwork, the drinks start flowing, pre-gaming in the kitchen and going to the club, right? Mm-hmm. and then they're not done until 2 or 3 a.m., 4 a.m. That's a recipe for cancer, literally. Like we're going to see a huge outbreak of these diseases. So getting back to light, this is what it comes down to. Our cells emit light. They communicate with light. And electromagnetism is a form of light. So Wi-Fi is actually a form of light. And when these pulsed, non-native electromagnetic frequencies that are a form of light go through our body, they actually throw off our cell communication. Because our cell membranes, the cell walls oscillate at 100 hertz. They shake at 100 hertz. And non-native EMFs in the US, like in all your walls, are 60 hertz. So practical takeaway from this little spiel is to unplug your Wi-Fi at night. I unplug my router, and there's also some other things you could do too. Go to lessemf.com and buy a router mesh. It's like $30, and you put it over the router. And I measured this with my Gauss meter. I have different EMF meters, and there's a measurable reduction in the signal, like 99%. But you still pick it up. And then I stack that with grounding. Like right now that I'm talking to you, I'm on a grounding mat. So there are these mitigations, and there are healthy ways to actually create Wi-Fi. That's what Dave Asprey and a lot of smart people are looking into right now, Dr. Mercola, because we can have these technologies. We don't have to go back to the jungle and the caves. We can use these technologies in better ways. So, so many tangents just on the light thing. I used to be afraid of the light. And I noticed that when I was eating junk food, like a lot of bread and cheese and processed foods, yes, you feel that burning sensation. If you go out in the sun and it feels harsh, I felt that in the past. And I can tell you what that means. That means that you have oxidized fats, like basically plastic, in your cell membranes. So what's the solution to that? Take MitoLife DHA and sweat in the sauna. And that's a way, because what is a sunburn? You're not able to actually absorb the photons that are hitting your tissues, and or you don't have enough electrons to collect them. Because photons hit electrons 100% by chance. That's what happens when photons come into our skin, into our tissues. the more electron dense we are, if we're grounded, we're more electron dense. If we're full of DHA, like we're supposed to have 3 pounds of it in our nervous system, that's the best electron collector built by nature. So now we're able to capture more photons. So just by those two things alone, having DHA in our system and being grounded, that reduces our risk of a sunburn. And then you add in chlorophyll in your blood. So now cytochrome C oxidase, it's a little driver between the cytochromes. Now you can capture more photons. And now you take some spirulina and some chlorella, you have chlorophyll in your blood. Now I just gave you 4 things that you can do to actually absorb more sunlight. And that's true nutrition. I'm not giving you a smoothie recipe. I'm giving you a total body regeneration recipe. It's about absorbing more light. That's the bottom line. So we shouldn't feel, I mean, if you start to get pink, obviously, yes, go indoors. Use discretion. But if you're wearing sunglasses, that increases your risk of getting a sunburn because you're causing a mismatch. We need the sun in our naked eyes to have that process work of sulfating cholesterol into hormone D. So it's kind of a synergy of things. It's kind of we need to kind of like re-educate, and like Yoda says, you must unlearn what you have learned.
Yeah, so I mean that's fascinating. That my assumption was the same, that it probably is what they're consuming currently that's not allowing them to absorb the sun in the correct way, or the sun in such a fashion where it wouldn't be harmful. Is what my assumption was. And what's also interesting about what you said is that even on the level of just eating food in general, like it doesn't matter like how much food you eat unless it's actually absorbed, and that's a powerful statement in itself. So I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people just keep saying that, oh well, I get in the sun and I feel like I'm just burning up. What else I noticed recently with me, and this is a testament to what you're saying, when I am, taking in things like DHA, and I'm taking in things like beef tallow and certain types of fat and broth, bone broth, I don't feel like I heat up as fast in the sun. Like I don't burn up. I don't feel like I'm sweating. My body temperature does not increase as fast. I thought that was fascinating. Could you speak to that, or is that like just chance, or is there something going on there?
Yeah, that's great. So you said bone broth and beef tallow.
And DHA, yeah.
And DHA, yeah. So yeah, the DHA. I mean, that's a no-brainer. That's what built our brain, and there's actually evidence to suggest that that's why we have hair loss. It's because our body's trying to get more photons. So if you imagine the hair would block the ability of your head to get photons.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so the first studies on red light, they tried to kill rats with red lasers. They found that the only thing that happened is that the hair grew faster and thicker with red light. Wow. So that's one of like the most proven benefits of red light is for hair regrowth and skin health. So and as far as the collagen and bone broth, there's a lot of things. The glyphosate, and this is a big topic now. We're breathing glyphosate. Glyphosate is a super, super deep toxin. It's one of the deepest toxins that we're ingesting. And the problem with glyphosate is that it actually disrupts cytochrome P450 enzymes. And that enzyme is critical for detoxification, for like a detox pathway. So it also displaces glycine in our body. And glycine is one of the most critical amino acids that's found in pretty much every cell. And it's and glyphosate pushes glycine out. So you mentioned bone broth. Bone broth is rich in glycine. So what you're doing with that is that you're actually pushing out the glyphosate when you're eating bone broth. And there's different ways. I'm on a vegetarian deal right now. I've gone back and forth over the years. I feel, it might be a seasonal thing, but just emotionally, spiritually, energetically, I feel better not eating animal product, like animal flesh and stuff. But I've been experimenting with E3 Live, like blue-green algae from Klamath Lake, Oregon. believe it or not, that has pretty much all the same amino acids that bone broth has. It even has
Mm.
glycine. That
Mm.
blew my mind. So I'm kind of megadosing this blue-green algae, especially the brain on right now. Next
Mm.
level. I have a lot of cool new experiments I'm doing. Um, but yeah, so collagen and water are what electrons flow across. So to answer your question succinctly, what you're doing by doing that, taking collagen, taking bone broth, beef tallow, you're actually, well, you're increasing the ability of electrons to flow throughout your body. And when you do that, you're actually going to have more of a smooth relationship with the sun. Because when people have mitochondrial dysfunction, when electrons and protons can't flow across as efficiently, and there's like little blocks, and maybe they're deficient in CoQ10 and ubiquinol, because that's there's all these shuttles across the cytochrome, and the biggest ones are ubiquinol and that one that chlorophyll, cytochrome C oxidase. These are little like drivers that help the electrons and protons across. And as the electrons and protons meet at the fifth cytochrome, the ATPase, it's a spinning rotor, and it creates ATP. The proton and electron comes together and they kind of make love, and that creates that energy burst. It's like a microcosm, macrocosm thing.
Mm.
Male, female, positive, negative, proton, electron.
Mm.
And so, yeah,
That,
so
and
when we have
that's
issues, okay.
I was just gonna say, so that's essentially the process of creating usable energy in the body,
It
is what
is.
you're
And it
describing.
goes, yeah, and it goes deeper too, because people think it's just ATP is, that's where we get energy, but then ATP actually binds to water, and that's where the magic happens. So it's, if we're dehydrated, that's when, we can't really be a free energy machine.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, you literally have to eat less food because we have to kind of change our thinking. Two-thirds of our electrons should come from being barefoot or wearing conductive shoes and from sunbathing and sun in our eyes. And one-third should come from food. We're designed for that. And it makes it easier if we're not living in a polluted environment. Like I'm surrounded by hundreds of 100 feet tall pine trees,
Mm.
and those release a terpene called pinene that has so many effects, anti-inflammatory. They increase oxygen in my body. They
Mm.
increase the redox potential in my mitochondria. They're just like amazing. But that's why you feel amazing when you go on a hike. But if you're wearing conductive shoes, maybe if you're shirtless, if you're not wearing sunglasses, all these things kind of add up.
Mm. Gotcha. Okay, so that's powerful in itself. I think if people began to even do even like one third of what you're saying, they'd probably feel a benefit. I mean, just that much would change their life. And I think even as you go into more of these biohacks per se, you look at like the world today, and we have, if you've heard of Jason Silva, that kind of like the modern philosopher. We have like everything at our fingertips. Like technology is like giving us information left and right. Um, and oftentimes people say that we are in the worst of times. Um, in a way, though, what I think is fascinating is that depression is going up more and more, and so it kind of talks and speaks to this idea of EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies that we're being exposed to constantly, and the lack of real nutrition in our body. And I think people, when they think of nutrition, they simply think of this oral fixation of putting something in their mouth, chewing it, and then masticating, digesting it, and then hopefully by the food gods they'll digest it, or sorry, absorb it and then eliminate it properly.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's, when it comes to things like depression, anxiety, some of these mood disorders, um, I want to pick your brain a little bit on how these biohacks per se. Actually, I don't know if I want to use the word biohack because it's just the
Phytohacks.
yeah, it's just like the truth of the matter is just that. But when it
Yeah.
comes to these mood disorders, like how can these things help? Like how does sunlight and cold water help?
Man, so it's so synchronistic you brought that up. I was talking with I don't like to call them clients because they're people. No, I don't work with clients. I work with
I like
people.
that.
Just it's like calling someone a patient.
Yeah.
Why are we asking them to be patient? Are we feeding them drugs to prolong their death? Why do we call them patients? All these. Why do we say good morning? If you add a U in there, why don't say happy rising? Why are we mourning every morning?
Oh,
So
happy
soon start looking at the
rising.
language. Yeah. So so with yeah, I was talking with a woman yesterday on the phone, and she was telling me she pretty much suicidal. She's been thinking about giving up many times,
Hmm.
severely depressed, literally, besides being work on the couch for 6 months, kind of like that kind of debilitating depression. And it drained me after I talked to her for the rest of the day.
I
Even all my
bet.
friends could see it. Yeah, I'm kind of like I'm kind of like Wolverine and X-Men. Like I'm very good at like just transferring my energy into people,
Uh-huh.
and I'm very empathetic. So I put all of my heart into other people.
Hmm.
Sometimes too much,
Hmm.
and that could be a blessing and a curse. And
For
so,
sure.
um, so yeah, she was living on the third floor in an apartment, bunch of Wi-Fi signals,
Hmm.
pale, very pale, doesn't have a sun practice, pretty much, lives an indoor existence, eating processed food, chronically disconnected from the Earth's magnetic field. Oh,
Hmm.
I mean, just literally everything wrong.
Yeah.
And so I just got her on magnesium bicarbonate and Shilajit. Just practically, I just want to start with that. If anyone listening knows anyone dealing with like suicidal depression, very intense neurological stuff, even anxiety, Alzheimer's, dementia, anything brain related, DHA and magnesium bicarbonate or magnesium chloride if they can't find magnesium bicarbonate. Foot baths, full baths, but especially foot baths with the magnesium flakes.
Hmm.
DHA and magnesium are like brain, like those are like the two missing links in most people's brain from like a physiological like spacesuit level. Because to make these neurotransmitters, to make these happy chemicals, we need this like infrastructure, structural components. And DHA is a structural component. We have 20% of our prefrontal cortex is DHA. It makes up a huge part of our brain. And DHA is not just like, it's just like we take it and we excrete it. It gets stored in the nervous system. And when it's there, like, for example, when it's in our nerves, it's in our brain, it's in our heart, our eyes. Now we can actually capture these photons.
Hmm.
And so let's go here. Like, let's say you start blocking artificial light at night. At least just limiting it. Use night shift. Get a little lowbluelights.com or bulletproof Zentek. Get a screen filter for your phone. Anything. Just do the best you can, but limit artificial light at night, and then get bright light in your eyes in the morning. And if you have, and the more you do that, the less you're going to burn DHA out in your eye, because that's what artificial light does. Burns
Hmm.
out DHA in our retina, and the
Hmm.
photoreceptors are loaded with it. So in the morning, I mean, this is the cure for like brain diseases. AM sunlight in the naked eyes. Go out in the morning, first thing, and as soon as you can see the sun, look towards it. You don't have to look into it, but just look, 15 degrees below. And if you have DHA in your eyes and you have tyrosine, the amino acid, tyrosine is an aromatic amino acid, and it gets converted into dopamine
Hmm.
eventually. After going through like 5 or 6 conversions, you do need pyridoxine, you need vitamin B6, you need copper, some other nutrients. But for the most part, just having DHA in your eyes and getting sunlight in your eyes, especially in the morning, because that releases all the hormones in your anterior pituitary gland. And this balances your brain chemistry, your body chemistry. So getting to your question, nature informs us. Nature has information. And so when we're chronically disconnected from nature, we're not getting that information. And that's when we get depression. That's when we get anxiety. But when we plug into nature through our feet, through conductive shoes, through barefooting, through our naked body, because every tissue needs the sun, our reproductive organs, especially in man's testes, literally just 3 minutes of sunlight boost testosterone. I mean, especially like red light therapy, boost testosterone triple. Like triples testosterone production. It's super powerful, especially for women getting their breasts in the sun, their vagina. It's every tissue needs the sun, and that's the recipe for informing your body. That's the reason why we see so many angry people on the road honking, and where we live in a world where everyone's no eye contact. I just wrote about this in my newsletter. Whenever I go to the grocery store or any store, I make it a point daily that I make eye contact with the person and just say, hey, I see you, telepathically. I don't have to tell them.
Yeah.
Make deep eye contact with them. Give them a very genuine smile and be with them in that moment. That's the most powerful thing we could do. And especially when we're doing these practices, because our eyes emit photons. Our body emits biophotons.
Yeah.
If you watch the show Cops, and they're flying a helicopter over and they're seeing the criminals running, and they're using the camera to see his infrared light. Our body's emitting infrared light. You can see it with a FLIR camera. And that's what structures the water in our mitochondria, in our brain, in our neurons. And that's what actually fires up our brain. So just that process of, being bright and having this halo like the 12 apostles, that's related to photons and the brain and water and magnetism. And so all these things kind of come together, and the magic of all of it is what we do with it in our community with other people, because you can transfer that information between people. And that's the deepest power with all this stuff, because that's how we're really going to change the world. You don't have to say a word. It's an instant download.
Yeah. Wow. Now, like when you talk about this work here, I mean, this work that you've been researching and the truth that's been out there, if someone says, I don't know if I can get that sunlight in my eyes that time because I have to be at work before whatever time, what would you tell that person? How do you make that practical? Like you talked about red light, talked about infrared light. How do you go about getting yourself infrared light? How do you do that?
That's a great question. Yeah, so that's the woman that I was working with the other day. She asked that too. A lot of this isn't practical, but you kind of have to restructure your life a little bit. So you pack your bags. You're on your way to work. You're walking to your car with your cooler and your bag for the day. Put that in the car. Take 30 seconds, 1 minute, anything, and look towards the sun while you're standing at your car. I mean, do the best you can, but even on the cloudiest day, if it's completely overcast, about 30% of ultraviolet light, visible purple, still gets through. It's the blue light in the morning that wakes us up, because that's what causes reactive oxygen species in the eye. That's the damage of artificial light, but we need that in the morning to wake us up. It starts like the little cascade with our glands. But practically do the best you can. That's that part. Okay. You can get into artificial lights and you could play with those. It's just a little dangerous. There's there's sad lights you can buy. Like there's the Spurty lamp, which is like hundreds of dollars. You can buy like a health food co-op or a health food store. A lot of the time they'll have these happy bulbs. Look for them. Those would be like grow bulbs or full spectrum lights. And go to Home Depot, get like a $10 clamp, like for cannabis growers or plant growers. It's like that aluminum clamp light fixture. And this is like a $20 setup. And this is what I do with people on a budget. And nothing replaces the sun, but that signal in your eye is like a one-time signal for the rest of the day. So this isn't just like it's kind of important. This is like, if you want to have a healthy brain, this is critical, because what wakes us up in the morning is light, and we need to give our brain that signal that it's time to wake up. So let's say, if people don't have that option to get sunlight in their eyes in the morning, I would point them to an artificial full spectrum light. And they don't stare into it, but look towards it. Ideally, be shirtless at least, maybe be naked, and sit in front of it in a chair. Just stand in front of it and look towards it. Don't blind yourself with the light. But it's just tricky with artificial lights because it can get dangerous, especially with the timing. In my RV, when you interviewed me in past interviews, I set up I even have a YouTube video on this. So you can make your own infrared sauna with 250-watt heat lamps, like chicken lights. and I used PVC pipe and canvas, and it cost me like $200. It took up like a fourth of my RV, and I was addicted to that. That was like mostly near infrared, but I was like sitting in that thing for 5-6 hours a day for like a month or two when I first set it up. But I felt that charging effect, and because I was so deficient in infrared energy. And we can go deep into that if you want, but there's a difference between far infrared from like a dry sauna. There's full spectrum saunas. The artificial light, that could be like a whole episode just because there's different wavelengths, different parts of it. So
yeah.
But practically, people don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on a seasonal affective disorder like depression curing light, because there are those out there. If someone's on a budget, $10-15 online, I forget the name of it, but it's like Happy Bulb or something like that. And it's like 10 or 15.
I think it's funny that they call it Happy Bulb because it's kind of telling you what light is doing for you, and in essence, it's kind of leading you to the answer there. It's like Happy Bulb. It's changing your neurochemistry. But I mean, I think this is what I see a lot of the times because we talk about the science, right? I think people just look at happy bulbs and they think, oh, that's like interesting. Sun makes you happy. Oh yeah, that's just kind of like makes sense. But they don't connect the physiological piece, which we're talking about. And I think that's where they get tripped up. So then they dismiss it. There's kind of this cognitive dissonance between, this idea that the sun would help my mood and then the fact that the physiology is changing. And even though the physiology is truth, it's like, it just kind of makes sense. I think that's interesting. I think that's also pervasive for many reasons. And I think this is in the medical field. It's pervasive in the medical field, but then it's overshadowed by a whole lot of stuff, like the big pharma, all that. I mean, we can go into a whole episode on that. But I mean, like, I think that's fascinating. I think the powerful thing that you're doing is that you're leading by example as well, and that you're just simply helping others by your example, but also now sharing these all the content you share is freaking free. It's like stuff that people sometimes will pay like thousands of dollars for, right? And then now you actually have a supplement line in a way that's helping thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions one day. I really hope it gets out to the masses. But I think there's something really powerful in that. Like when someone is really ready for the truth and when they've really like gone through the cycles of this stuff and then been like, I'm tired of feeling tired. I'm tired of someone telling me that there's going to be a restriction on my body because some person in a white coat told me that if I go out and do this, I will get a disease. And then when they're ready, the teacher appears, right? It's that whole idea. So it's like, how do you like, I mean, I'm sure you get trolls all the time because there's this big contradiction, I'm sure, between the medical field and the health and wellness field. And that's kind of like a weird place. We're in an interesting place right now where they're beginning to merge, but there's still this kind of discrepancy between the medical field and the health and wellness field. And me just saying that cracks me up. Medical field, health and wellness field. Should it be one? Right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I feel like, there are some, like, I look at all these conferences, like the Paleo Conference, the Bulletproof Conference.
Yep.
Pretty much all the speakers, MD, PhD, there's all these letters after their name. Mm-hmm. I have a bachelor's degree. I went to college for like 8 years. I switched majors 3 times. I took a lot of general ed. A lot of it was philosophical, foundational stuff. But I did take my nutrition classes I took, I could say were almost worthless. Because when they told me that cholesterol, to limit dietary cholesterol, I just laughed out loud in the nutrition class. All right, I have 3 more months of this. How am I going to stay sane?
For sure.
And so there's good takeaways. I remember when I gave one of the last talks in my nutrition class, one of my classmates was like, I learned more in your talk than I did in this entire class.
Wow.
And so we're getting to a point where, yes, college helps. Yes, the mainstream, we can use some of that knowledge, some knowledge of biochemistry, some knowledge of physics, all that helps. Dr. Jack Cruz will split your brain open. His blogs are so hard to read. You'll spend like 2 hours reading one paragraph trying to understand it. That's why my job is to kind of, and this is where my value is with MitoLife, is I have a weekly newsletter. I write up articles, and I share with people how to use DHA, but sometimes I don't even talk about DHA, how to use these practices. But DHA helps with all of them. And how to basically become your own doctor. You don't need to know what every frequency of light does when you're out in the sun, because you're getting them all and they're going to be doing their job. So, our understanding, we're like children, and nature's effects nature is so intelligent. I mean, with everything, it just rained here yesterday very hard. And I went out there and I smelled the air and all the pine trees. And I smelled the ozone. And there's an interaction with the pine trees and the ozone. And it's just nature has like hundreds, thousands of these magical interactions. And of course, we've disrupted some of them, like the biogeochemical cycles with acid rain and with NPK fertilizer. The soils aren't just stripped of nutrients, but there's no more fulvic and the microbes are mutated or dead. And so we have changed things at a fundamental level, especially with our produce, which is why supplementation is key. And you can eat seafood for your DHA, but you're going to get, plastic, you're going to get radiation, parasites, and heavy metals. So once I found a bunch of worms in my sardines, I cut out seafood, and I've just been taking my DHA with some iodine and selenium, intelligently supplementing. But the ultimate food and supplement is the sun. It is the earth, and we can maximize our connection to those. So
that's crazy. I mean, it's just it just blows my mind how simple in a way it is, and like it's every morning when you wake up, it's freaking there in the sky, and it's just there, and then it's neglected, and I guess my mind is just blown by the fact that this information, I mean, I know it's out there. It's pervasive now. I see it within all these conferences. I see it with people speaking now about it. But it still blows my mind as to how many people are resistant to it. And I guess I can see why, given the conflict of information. Like, who do I trust? Where do I go? But man, it's just I'll give you my own personal anecdotal story. It's just every morning now. It's interesting. I've been waking up, and not maybe by choice. Who knows? But like, I'm waking up right at 4 a.m. and then right at 4 a.m. I start walking, and I start walking, and I go out to a trail, and then I walk for quite a while until the sun starts to peek out a little bit, and then I kind of stare into it, almost like not directly, but like you're saying, almost towards it, and it's been powerful. Like, I feel like I need less food to operate every day, and then my productivity is so much higher. Like, I used to think, okay, if I woke up at 4, I have to start working at 4 a.m. And instead now it's like, if I wake up at 4, no, I'm going to really savor this moment of being outside and smelling the trees and taking it. And if it rains, fuck it, let it rain. Like, let it come on my skin. And I've started to do that, because before, like, oh my God, it's raining, and there's this programmed idea that I need to get out of the rain. But I was like, this time I'm just going to let it hit me and see what happens. And I feel like I'm being charged by electrons, like you're saying. I'm just being charged up. I'm like a battery being charged up, and then once I'm charged, I'm like at full capacity, like my smartphone, and I'm able to do so much more. Like all the updates on my phone, like me, are done. So I just my testimony to that is that it's working, and I feel so much better. My workouts are better. My training is better. My voice is different. It's changing the way I compose myself. So yeah, man, I definitely think there's a lot of truth to it, just from what's out there scientifically, but also from my own experience. And I guess that's where you're coming from. You can only implore and encourage people to experience these things.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, you're charging your battery pack. We have a mammalian battery pack. We're a mammal, and it's built of DHA and water. That's how we literally. It's like Tron, like he has the battery pack. You charge that. I think I had a dream about that the other night. I have a lot of dreams when I'm in classrooms and I'm learning in my dreams.
Oh wow,
it's interesting.
That's pretty badass.
And yeah, it's a pretty cool school. I've had that ever since I was growing up, and yeah, we literally can, okay, you look at a tree, it's constantly connected to the Earth's magnetic field, to the Earth's tectonic plates. That's what creates, the Earth's magnetism is created from photons striking the Earth during the day, and then from the tectonic plates moving and that friction.
Yeah.
And then the magnetic field actually is higher at night, believe it or not, which is why it's more powerful to sleep grounded, because you're getting more magnetism at night. And then if you want to up it, you get a Magnetico sleep pad like I do. So I sleep on 20 times the Earth's magnetic field. It's like a little bit of investment. It's like $1,000, but if anyone's interested, I have a YouTube video, YouTube search Dr. Dean Bonley, watch all his stuff. I mean, talk about metal detox. Wow. But you look at a tree, constantly connected, and it's connected to the canopy to the sun 24/7, right? That's its food. And it creates matter out of thin air from water. And we're able to disconnect from the Earth and from the sun for extended periods. We're mammals, so we can hibernate like a polar bear. And what allows us to do that is DHA and water. So, for example, in winter, like if you have less sun, you're talking about depression and stuff.
Yeah.
How do we create happiness? It's sunlight in the eyes or artificial light, happy bulbs. That works similarly. And also cold. Going into cold water boosts dopamine 250%.
Wow.
Just 57 degrees. 57 degrees.
Wow.
And so the sweet spot for cold water, if you're going to do a cold soak, is 50 to 55. That's what all the research shows. If you want to do deep CT, my record was 45 degrees Fahrenheit.
Damn.
I lasted about 10 minutes. Yeah.
Shit.
And I'm working down to the cold. Like it's about to start snowing. I'm planning on doing cold soaks in the snow.
That's awesome.
I'm probably going to go down to 30 degrees. So I'm working up to that.
This is a natural progression. Let's talk about cold. You have people like Wim Hof out there that's doing some pretty powerful work. I'm glad he's being studied by universities now so they can see what's happening. But we talk about cold. You talked about dopamine increasing 250%. That's already powerful. Now, for people that don't know, what does dopamine do?
Awesome. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and it is known as the happy chemical. So, with serotonin, it works with serotonin. So, depressed people are prescribed SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and that keeps serotonin recycling.
Okay.
And most people are chronically serotonin and chronically dopamine deficient.
Okay.
And dopamine is it's called an aromatic amino acid. So what's really interesting, a lot of people don't know this about different proteins in their body. They have different absorption spectrums. So the electromagnetic spectrum of light is measured in nanometers. And if we could see this energy, it would look like waves. And the distance in between the waves like from the crest and the trough, like an ocean wave, is the wavelength, the distance. And, nanometers, we're talking about microscopic distances. But something like ultraviolet light is super short wavelength, and so that's high-powered light. And that's why it could burn us. Same with blue light. Blue and purple, ultraviolet, these are all very high-powered, short wavelength light. Then when we go to infrared, it's like long wavelengths, and that's why they penetrate deeper. So UV and blue are very superficial, very they don't penetrate as deep into our tissues. But these longer wavelengths, infrared, penetrate very deep. But it's the blue and the purple that actually reacts mostly with these aromatic amino acids. And so tyrosine, phenylalanine, tryptophan. Tryptophan gets converted into serotonin, and then serotonin gets converted into melatonin. Tyrosine gets converted into levodopa, and levodopa gets converted into dopamine. And of course, there's required nutrients, like I mentioned before, within those steps. But you can take mucuna, that Ayurvedic herb, and that contains levodopa in it, so you can get the precursor to dopamine. So there's all these little hacks. You take mucuna, or you can take tyrosine, but mucuna is closer. But I think you should give your body more of the precursors instead of the end product, because the body does like to make those conversions itself. Kind of gives it something to do. But my point is, these amino acids that to create happiness, it requires purple and blue light. So it's just interesting. We are beings of light, and we do require colors. And you think about, there's this great book I have, I can't remember the name of it. I think it's Into the Light. No, it's just called Light, The Future of Medicine. And this author talks about the seasons and how when we go into summer, there's all these bright colors, and there's bright fruits, and everything's bright. And then we go into fall, and everything's getting darker, and it's the decay, and it's these cycles of nature, these changing colors. It's the same thing in our body. We need we need to feed it colors, both with our food, both visually, on the deepest level with light itself. And these colors give us these are the basic ingredients to create pretty much our life.
Wow.
So yeah, it's the blue and purple light that create happiness. And when people block, one of the most practical things people can do is just throw out their sunglasses. If you need it when you're driving, when you're in the snow, when you're on a lake, that's cool. But do not use the sunglasses when you're just walking around, because that UVB during the day, that's what builds dopamine in your brain.
So they got to wear it at night.
Yeah, wear sunglasses at night. Yeah.
That dude had something going. He knew the truth. That guy who sang the song knew the truth.
Exactly, yeah. And it's just important to note too, pornography, which most men are on, I think, that depletes dopamine.
That's for sure.
That depletes dopamine. Social media depletes dopamine. I mean, it's tough with people like you and I, because Instagram, Facebook, we're on those things for our business. It's not even business. It's we're sharing, we're helping people.
Yep.
It's our life, right? So it's just that, for me, what I do to keep balance with social media is I'll take a day off here and there. And even from then, I'll notice that energy of everyone, when are you going to post again? And then I post something and it's it blows up. So it's funny. But we need, take days off, take breaks. Yeah. And, but you there is a way, let me put it this way. I want this phrase to become more popular: burn rate. So we have a burn rate of DHA, how fast it's burning out in our retina and in our brain. Very fast. The more artificial light we have, or the more fake suns we have in our life, the more non-native EMF we have in our life, the higher our DHA burn rate. So that people always ask, how much do I take? Of MitoLife, you should take 2,000 milligrams a day, especially if you're not blocking artificial light at night. If you are, then I would do it anyway, and you're just super building your levels. It takes about a year to build your tissue levels. But same thing with magnesium. How much are you stressed? Even if you don't feel too stressed, if you drive a lot, you're like, kind of like us, like we work with a lot of people. That's just stress.
That's
It's
stress.
like we're very, very out. We're just like
Absolutely.
putting out a lot of energy. So you need to take magnesium, and my favorite forms are bicarbonate or chloride. So just burn rate is really so. Dopamine burn rate. How often are you on social media? Every day, all day? Okay, you can balance it. You don't have to quit social media, but you better take cold showers. You better jump in the cold, and you better get sunlight in your naked eyes and nude sunbathe. So all those things help with dopamine. So there are a lot of mitigation things. We don't,
Oh, we lost Matt for a second. You're back.
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, I think, what was I going to say? With cold showers and cold water and cold immersion, we talked about how we got on this track in the first place was talking about the cold. And when we think of cold, most people associate cold with sickness. Oh, it's winter. Winter is coming, so to speak. And winter comes, it comes with all these like maladies. So I think it's counterintuitive for most people to think I need to go into the cold. I need to do that because they're thinking immediately it's going to cause all sorts of problems. Like you hear mom and dad say, "Oh, don't go in the cold without your sweater because you're going to get sick." So there's this other like counterintuitive thing. So could you speak a bit into what cold is doing in the body, like when we expose ourselves regularly to it and intelligently to it?
Yes, excellent. It's really funny that resistance that you just mentioned. Is real quick on that. It's like when we want to tell someone something, and instead we lie to them. It's like, no, it's easier to tell the truth. And it's uncomfortable. Same thing with cold. It's uncomfortable, right? Or some people, as Daniel says, fun comfortable.
Yeah.
And so he transmute it that way. And so it's funny. It's all linked. Fear of the sun, fear of the cold, fear of telling the truth, fear of being uncomfortable. No, go into your darkness. Yeah, that's what meditation is about.
Yeah.
You feel bad, go into that feeling.
Absolutely.
Feel it fully, and then process it.
Yeah.
Same thing with the cold. You crank it all the way to cold, kind of scared, jump in anyway. 10 seconds later, oh wow, this isn't too bad. Like I still breathe hard at first. I go into the cold, I'm like wow, I even make some noise, like woo, just like whatever. Yeah, just like let it out.
Yeah.
Even that expression is healing. That's part of the experience of a cold shower, is releasing that stuck energy in the body, whether it's a sound, a grunt, a yell, whatever it is. And so that's part of it. It's like psychological, emotional. Another part of it is getting past your just feeling the fear and doing it anyway, obviously. And then the physiological part, there's multiple aspects. So Paul Chek talks about it. There's the hunter's reflex. So it shunts the blood from deep in the body to the extremities. And then when you get out and you warm up again, then it goes back. So it's like you're getting this like arterial kind of like circulation of the blood. You're getting blood into tissues and areas that didn't have it before. And that blood, hemoglobin, carries oxygen. And oxygen is the terminal electron acceptor in mitochondria. It's what pulls electrons across that chain. So it's really all about oxygen. That's why breathing can give you energy. And that's part of the other thing of the cold shower is it makes you breathe. Wim Hof talks about that. He says the cold is a teacher. And that's been my experience. When I did my coldest soak at 46 degrees, I couldn't stop breathing. I mean, if I do like 55 degrees, I'm in a meditative state and I could kind of almost hold my breath for a little bit or just like be in that breathless state, just breathe very slow. But if you go really cold, like 46, if I stop breathing, I would have to jump out of the water.
Yeah.
So I had to go like, which is like very deep, constant
Yeah.
breaths. And that's processing. That's emotional processing. That's psychological, because we're in our society, we're unconsciously holding our breath.
Hmm.
A lot of people talk about this.
Hmm.
So there's back and forth I've heard about wanting to do deep. You should do deep diaphragmatic breathing. I've heard different things. Different yogis say different things. There's so many.
Yeah,
I'll hear
totally.
every single side of everything.
Totally.
But the bottom line is we need to be more aware of our breath, and the cold kind of does that. It kind of, instead of I prefer to have nature be my teacher. So instead of having to watch a bunch of YouTube videos on breathing exercises, because I've done that in the past. I've tried to do it like, okay, 10 seconds, hold, 15 seconds, blah, blah, blah. That's too heady for me. So when I go in that ice bath, it's like, okay, the cold is telling me how to breathe.
Sure.
Or the cold shower. And so that's the biggest benefit, is that and the more you do it, it actually entrains you throughout the day with your breath. So this has been a long process for me because I've been a shallow breather my whole life. Just different traumas and stuff. We kind of I think in your work with Train Life Fit, you talk about these holding patterns that we have in our body.
Yeah.
And different tensions. It's the same thing with our breath, and I think you probably looked into that yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even for someone to even train here, the first thing they have to understand is breathing allows them to access their deep pelvic floor core muscles. They can't really move efficiently if they're still in their head, because now they're going into these holding patterns in their neck and their trap and their jaw. And there's no way you can direct the flow of energy to your midline, which is your ultimate stabilizer for your limbs. And so that's like where we come from, but it's so connected. It's everything. The reason why they're coming in that way is because they're lacking these aspects of their life: sunlight, water, these things that if they were to get, they would come into training from a different perspective. They'd be already in the state of core activation because the diaphragmatic breathing is doing that. So I mean, this is, if anything, it just feeds back to how powerful this work is in changing everything. Because I think to be a better athlete, to be a better human in general, these ideas are not only cool and awesome, but they're absolutely crucial. So
yeah, and I get really excited about all this stuff because, you and I, Samara, we have I think of it as a responsibility. But I am like a kid in Disneyland right now because I have access to all these tools. I'm just I just moved to a cabin in the mountains. It took me a year to manifest that. I read it as if it was in the present every night before bed, and I felt what it felt like to live here. And my intention is heart-centered because I really want to help people access more of their potential. And what you're doing at Train Life Fit and what I'm doing with MitoLife, it's really important. And I think you get lit up by this too. We're here in a first world country, and we do have a lot of forces kind of working against us in a way. But at the same time, we could buy pretty much anything we want online. We have access to in 2 days, Amazon. It's like we're getting instant manifest. I mean, say what you want about Amazon, it's the corporation, that's another thing. But my point is just we have access to these so many tools and so much information in this community. Say what you want about the internet and Wi-Fi and being tapped and listen to all that stuff.
Yeah.
All the positive aspects is we are exponentially accelerating our growth.
Yeah.
And to me, I wake up every day so excited that we have this opportunity, because think of how many people die of starvation every day.
Oh my God, yeah.
How many people are malnourished? How many children are dying? I think the stat is insane of how many people are without clean water. It's
Yeah.
like half, 1/4 of the world,
Yeah, it's
one half,
ridiculous.
something crazy. So, that's gratitude is key, but I get really almost emotional and almost want to cry a lot of the time, especially when I'm working with people, like that depressed woman.
Mm.
Because this isn't just about, this is very deep. Like we're talking about like literally uplifting humanity to a
Yeah.
next layer of consciousness and awareness. This is like very, 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 very deep work. It's not biohacking. It's it's much deeper than that.
Mm.
It's we're part of something beyond words. It's so big. It's way beyond us.
I agree. I mean, I agree. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel, and I feel almost this moral responsibility if we have light emitting through us in the form of this information that we're giving out, because the whole theme of today's talk is light energy. If it's coming out of us, then it's positive. And in a world where oftentimes it's easy to go down the route of being negative, I feel that there's a moral responsibility to speak up, and to share and to do these things, even when it's uncomfortable, or even when I feel like I'm judging myself, or I perceive that other people look at this as weird or strange or woo-woo, or call me a kook. I gotta still do it. And I think that's also when I read your work, it's like I think what's powerful about your work is that you back it up, and I think that's just beautiful. Not only just from the scientific perspective, but and using PubMed articles and using things that are quote unquote credible as they say nowadays. But you're doing it. That's I mean that's the most beautiful part. You're doing it, and I think if anything that liberates others to just try, to just freaking try, right? That's
Yeah,
it. That's all we can ask for.
I'm glad you brought up that point. Yeah, I know a lot of people that are way smarter than me, and I really recommend as a practice you do that. Just surround yourself with people that you feel are smarter than you. It's just because they'll lift you up
Oh
to
my
that
God.
to a
Yeah.
higher level. So I feel like my friend Rob Matt is way smarter than me that I've interviewed on my channel. He's like a MMA, former MMA, like raw vegan.
Oh
He's just
wow.
a biochemistry herbal expert. He's amazing. A friend too, just a really, really good heart.
That's
And I
awesome.
look at Dr. Jack Cruz the same way. And yeah, it's important to note that biophotons, like whether from the sun or extreme low frequency ultraviolet light that we emit, those are biophotons.
Yeah.
And riding every photon is an electron, and that's called an exciton.
Hmm.
And remember, we were talking about the mitochondria earlier and what feeds them. It's electrons and
Yeah.
protons, but electrons from the food and from sun and from grounding. We can also get electrons from other people. So when we're in a group, like when you're training someone at Train Life Fit and you're standing next to them, you're you're not just talking to them through your vocal cords. You're talking to them through your biophotons,
Totally.
and your biophotons are hitting there and and offloading those offloading those electrons into their mitochondria,
Yeah.
and you're speaking. That's telepathy at a deep
Mm.
level. You're giving them information.
Mm.
So this is really deep, and the quality of our biophotons are determined by the quality of food we eat, how much sunlight we eat, how grounded we are, and our thoughts and our emotions, our beliefs. But our thoughts and emotions, like it really is, we all have bad days, we all have, troughs and how we feel, but most of the time we should feel good. We're designed to feel that way.
Hmm.
And what makes us feel good is colors of light, is
Yeah.
grounding. This gets us into that high vibrational state. That
Agreed.
feel good state.
Yeah. I mean, like the whole emotional aspect of it, we could probably do another podcast just on that, right? I mean, like there's so many
Yeah.
podcasts we could do just from one topic, but man, this
Yeah.
is, I mean, I could probably talk for another hour if I didn't have another client with you coming in, or I should say now I want to use the word person. Another person
Yeah, I'm
coming in.
trying to change I mean, you could get too heady with the language thing,
Yeah, for sure.
My friend Graham Javon says understanding instead of understanding. I still haven't figured out why not to use understanding. It's like you're
Yeah.
standing under. I don't know.
But hey,
It's
man,
fun.
this is like this is powerful, and I'm so
Yeah.
glad we got to do it again. And I wanted to keep doing it because I feel like there's so much more we could talk about. Um, and for I mean for those people that are out there that want to reach out to you, that want to get their hands on your products, your DHA, I want to learn more from you. How can they do that?
Awesome. Yeah, so people can check me out at www.mitolife.us. So that's MitoLife.us, like the country. And I put out a weekly newsletter. When they sign up, they get my two ebooks, and I'm going to come out with two or three more. The ones I have out now are on light and water hacking. So how to increase and like actually practical things you could do. And the DHA that I offer, I have three products. One, basically two are droppers and three is a spray. And they're all omega-3 DHA based. They're all vegan, non-GMO, wild strain, water extracted. Because a lot of these companies, the vegan DHAs, it's going to be biotechnology from Martech Corporation. So this one's non-biotech, it's non-GMO. And it's water extracted, so they don't use we don't use neurotoxins like hexane or methane.
Gotcha.
And it goes straight to the brain, especially when you hold it in your mouth. And my spray, so I have a flavored, a lemon flavored, unflavored, and then a terpene spray with rosemary and lemon peel terpenes, a full terpene complex. So that does have a lot of effects. I mean, terpenes we're like in its infancy of researching the effects of terpenes. It's related to cannabis. Cannabis has cannabinoids over 100, but there's terpenes as well, and those have a lot of very powerful effects: anti-inflammatory, mood-regulating effects, decongestant effects, a lot of things. And so, yeah, check it out there. Sign up for the newsletter. Try my product, and if you use the code TrainLifeFit15, you'll get 15% off your order.
Sweet. Boom. Awesome. And if they want to go to a Facebook page, just facebook.com/MitoLife.
It's actually facebook.com/stay supercharged.
Stay super. Okay, stay
That's
supercharged.
it. Yeah.
Boom. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. I'm coming to your hood tomorrow, but I know you're gonna be 3 hours from San Diego, so I don't know if I can see you, but it would be awesome to see you, man.
I know, man. We have to link up.
Yeah,
We've known
sure.
each other for a few years now
Yeah.
or something. So
I'll give you a holler when I'm in town, and then if you can, awesome. If not, there'll be another time. I'm sure there will be.
Awesome, brother. Well, thanks for having me back, and we got to do this again for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.